Hi all, I'm Steve, thanks for being here. So, as a welder, do you want to earn the really big bucks? Of course you do. So you need to learn how to TIG route to X-ray standards, passing an X-ray inspection. Full penetration TIG routing gives a welder strength needed for safety critical applications such as pressure vessels, nuclear, aerospace and similar. A lot of these welds are X-ray tested because they have to be absolutely perfect and not fail under any condition. In this video I'm going to show you how to weld a sample from root, fill, cap and X-ray, and the very sample I'm going to weld I'm going to send for X-ray to test myself and to show that with the correct technique, application, preparation, skill and patience you can learn how to do this. Now this is going to cost me a lot of money, so please do me a huge favour, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more videos I'm going to release soon. I've got lots more coming up to help you be a better welder and share my skills. So, get yourself a coffee, get yourself comfy, let's get into it. I'm going to start by not sugarcoating this. TIG routing is hard to learn. It is in fact one of the hardest forms of welding you can do, but it is by no means impossible. With practice, perseverance and the discipline to keep going, you will get it. But that said, if you're new to TIG welding, you do need to practice from the very basics. So, if that is you, I recommend you watch my video, How to TIG Weld, which is appearing just above me right now. I recommend to check it out. It just gives you the basics and it teaches you how to TIG weld, which you need to master before you think about TIG routing. So get your head around that, and then come back to this afterwards. If you have just watched my video, How to TIG Weld, welcome back. If you're confident at TIG routing and you're going to get straight into it, great, let's do that. So, here's a test sample we're going to weld today. This is hot rolled mild steel flat bar, 60mm wide by 6mm thick, cut 175mm long. I'll let you do the imperial calculations. I'm from the UK, so I'm afraid it's all metric. Now, this is our sample, which is great, but the first thing to consider before any element of TIG routing is preparation, preparation, preparation. If you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail. Take a shortcut and your weld may fail inspection. So take your time to prepare. Saving a few minutes by taking a shortcut could cost you hours in repairs, especially if you've got to cut things out and start again. This is not good in a workshop environment. Worst case scenario, you look like a complete idiot and you have a very angry foreman. Both not good. So prepare, prepare, prepare. Here is a close-up of a prepped test piece ready for welding. Now let's learn some welder speak. The three main parts of a prepped root are the bevel, or angle of prep, your land, also known as the root face, and your root gap. Your bevel should be round about 45 to 60 degrees. This could be machined or cut with a grinder. The key thing is your bevel is not so tight that you can't get a torch in there, but not so wide that you'll be there forever filling it, with excessive heat input impacting inspection requirements such as hardness from your heat affected zone. Your land, or root face, is the very edge you will focus your arc on. I tend to leave 1mm of root face. Some prefer a feather edge where there is no left thickness. Experiment to see what you prefer. It does not matter how thick your material is, your roots will effectively be welding thin metal here, so go easy with your power. Your root gap speaks for itself. It's the gap between the two bevels your weld will penetrate. I have my root gap set round about 3mm. Too tight and your weld will not penetrate, too wide and you'll never land a root in there. The key thing to remember is when you start burning your root faces, your root gap increases. This is why I like to have 1mm of root face over a feather edge. I have a bit more meat to weld into and to absorb heat, and it's more forgiving. Other preparation considerations include your material being clean of any grease, rust, mill scale or any other contaminants. Keep it clean or you may fail the X-ray test. Your root faces must be as straight and as level as possible. If it is wonky, twisted or stepped, you will not get a root in there and it will not pass X-ray. Set your material in a way where it will not move during welding. Tack it, clamp it, do whatever you need to do. If the metal moves through heat and your root gap closes, you will have to stop, cut apart, re-prep, reset and start again. If your root gap closes or it becomes difficult to weld through movement, do not continue. It will not pass X-ray. And remember, do not take shortcuts. By now, you should have the idea. Take your time to prepare. It will pay dividends later. No matter how thick your material is, your root face is thin, so go easy on power. Also, don't forget to set your post gas. Pores, craters or porosity will show up in X-ray and it will be a fail. If you can afford to, I highly recommend getting a welder with a high frequency remote start and a foot pedal. This will allow you to fine tune and vary your amps as you go and gives you much more control. You could use a torch finger button as well, but this has a single setting only, which can give you slightly less control. Select your torch cup wisely. Make sure it is not too wide. You want to make sure you can focus the tungsten right onto your root edges, right onto your root faces and right into the bevel. Use the smallest root cup you have. Not so small that it restricts gas, but small enough to get into the root gap itself. Your tungsten stick out must be enough to reach the root edge, to focus the arc directly where you need it. To do this practice piece, I have made a purge box, where I connect a tube from my argon bottle to the box, which fills the area behind the root gap with argon, giving me a clean root, completely free of oxygen, and free of any contaminants which can cause the weld to oxidise. For X-ray, this is critical. Porosity in your root will show in an X-ray and it will fail. Just make sure you allow the purge gas to vent out. Don't set the pressure too high and don't put yourself into a position where you will close the root gap completely with no vent. Then the purge pressure will build up and it will blow your root out. Once again, that will show in X-ray. This may sound obvious, but it's easy to forget. Always remember to turn your purge off when you are done at the end of the day. If you don't, the next day, your bottle is empty, you have no gas, you can't weld. Not good and very expensive. Okay, so we are prepped, set up and ready to go. Let's now think about techniques we will use to do our roots. Definitely do not rush it. Rooting is a slow but precise welding method, with each movement needing to be precise and consistent. The key thing is to ensure your root edge visually burns away before adding a dab of filler rod, and do not hang around in one spot for too long. Always focus the heat on your root edges and the bevel itself, not in the centre of the root. When I learnt how to root weld, and this was many years ago now, an old school but very experienced and respected welder told me to look out for the onion on the root edge. No, I have not got mad. Hear me out, let me explain. Here is half an onion. And here is a root edge burnt away to the point where I would add a dab of filler. See the similarity? The message is, if your root edge has burnt away and you add a dab of wire to fill the root edge, you will have penetration, you will have full fusion, you will have a penetrative root. I'm sure there is a more technical term than saying onion, but onions are simple and simple is good. So we'll stick to onion, look for the onion, fill the onion with a dab of wire, do that on every root edge with every dab and you can't go wrong. Okay, so starting your root. Direct your tungsten and your arc directly on the root edge and wait for the onion to appear. The onion being your root edge starting to melt. As soon as you see the onion appear, add a tiny little dab of wire. Just a touch is all you need. you will have a blob of molten metal spanning from the root edge to halfway across your root gap. Then direct your arc towards the opposite side of the root edge and repeat the process of wait for the onion and then add a dab of wire. You will now have a bridge of molten metal across your root gap. Now go back across to just above where you started your first dab, and again wait for the onion, add a dab of wire, and then move across and dab. Move back across and dab, and each time you move across, go up slightly. So onion, dab, back across, onion, dab, up a little, onion, dab, and effectively zigzag your way up the root joint. Keep moving, wait for the onion, and only add a touch of metal when the onion appears. Keep your dabs close together. Don't go too coarse, but at all times keep moving. Do not dwell in one spot and keep your movements consistent at all times. Allow your filler rods to melt in, do not stab it in. Only touch the weld pool. If you stab in your wire too hard, it will overpenetrate, and on your x-ray it will show up quite clearly as overpenetration. Being able to continually feed your filler rod is a skill you need to master to minimise stop-starts. I've covered how to do this in a video coming up right above me now. Have a click, it will help you learn how to do this skill. This all probably sounds like a lot to do. You've got a lot to coordinate, you've got a lot to put together, you've got to get your timings right, and it's all got to come together. Now, I did say TIG routing is a difficult weld to do. It's not impossible, but it will take practice and it will take perseverance. It took me a long time to get the hang of this, so don't be disheartened if it doesn't work first time for you. Practice, 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 and you will get it. Now, my test piece I'm doing in a completely sterile test environment, and that's fine for practicing, absolutely fine. You need to learn how to do this first in a very well set up workshop environment before you do it out in the field. Here is a shot as seen through the mask. Look at the torch movement focusing the arc right on the root face, the smooth consistent motions, and the light touches with the filler rod. This is what you need to look for on the root faces before adding a dab of wire. Your root face must be burning away before you add the wire to ensure you get full penetration and full fusion. At all times, you must keep the weld pool moving. Don't forget your weld pool is molten metal, which is a liquid, and gravity will push it down and cause excess penetration if you go too slow. Do remember, TIG routing can be a slow process, so do not be alarmed if it takes a long time compared to laying a typical TIG weld. Don't rush it, as mistakes could happen. Just concentrate and focus on getting it right to make sure you pass the X-ray test first time. At some point during a route, you'll have to perform a stop-start. This is a common X-ray failure point, due to a lack of fusion between the points you left off and restart the weld. Do not restart at the very end you finished and just carry on. This is where the lack of fusion occurs and it can show an X-ray and it will be a fail. You need to blend in a restart by going back half an inch, create a weld pool, and without adding any filler rod, weave the torch along the welded route slowly until you get to the restart point. Only when you can see this point become a weld pool with an onion appearing, you can add filler rod and continue the route. Done correctly, the stop-start will be perfectly blended into the existing route with no distinguishable defect, no discontinuity, or any worries at all. This is the finished route. Unfortunately, I did not set my camera to record after I got the close-ups through a mask lens. You can see the root is right down the prep where you would focus on the root edges and get that penetration. I use a 2.4mm filler rod when routing, as it deposits filler faster and melts into the weld pool with just a touch, whereas with thinner rods you have to feed in, which can slow your travel speed, causing your roots to sag and over-penetrate. Okay, so the root run's done. Still a bit hot to the touch, but it's there. Let's get up to the camera. There we go. So next thing we need to do is a hot pass. Why do we do a hot pass? Well, it serves two purposes. Firstly, it tidies up the surface of the root. When you do a root run, at times the weld itself can look a little bit coarse, a little bit uneven. For x-ray purposes, it's not ideal. So the hot pass, quite simply, is a hot pass over the root run, just to tidy it up, smooth it out, and get it ready for the fitting runs. Now, contrary to common belief, the hot pass is not what some people may say, something that needs to be blasted into the root run nice and hot. Not at all. You don't need much more amps than what you use for the root run. Remember, the whole purpose of the hot pass is to tidy up the root and put a bit of extra meat on there ready for fitting runs. You don't need to go too hot in the hot pass because you could over-penetrate the root, burn through, create suck back, create lack of fusion, create a variety of defects which will be picked up in x-ray. So go gentle with the hot pass, you need to do it, but don't go crazy. For the root run, I use 2.4mm welding wire. For the hot pass, I'm going to go a little bit thinner and use 1.6. Why am I doing this? Well, remember, you don't want to go too hot in the hot pass. Use the similar amps you use for the root run. And you want the weld just to be nice and smooth to create a nice smooth surface for your fitting runs. Using a 1.6mm welding rod allows you to smoothly and evenly melt the welding rod into the weld pool, which will be the run forming the hot pass. If you use 2.4mm wire in your hot pass, you could end up with a somewhat lumpy run, not an ideal surface for your fitting runs. So thinner wire, nice and smoothly flow into the weld pool. Make sure your hot pass gives a nice clean surface. Another thing to do in your hot pass is go up a size on your torch cup. For the root run, I used a number 5 cup. For the hot pass, I'm going to go up to number 6. This is just to ensure you get that nice gas coverage and keep the weld looking nice throughout. Again, don't run any risk of porosity. And there's our hot pass, looking nice and tidy. Onto the run-on run-off plate, so we've got a nice smooth transition. So what we're going to do is let this cool down. We'll take it off the back, the purge box, and let's see how the root looks. Okay, time for the grand reveal. I'm genuinely nervous about this because I haven't seen this myself yet, so whichever way this swings, I'm either going to look like a hero or look like an absolute plonker, so let's find out. Okay, here we go. Yep. I'm happy with that. I would happily fill that, cap it, and send it for x-ray. And if it doesn't pass, on my head be it. So remember, subscribe to the channel, give us some support, let's get it sent for x-ray, see what happens. So let's get it filled and capped, let's finish it off, and take it from there. Okay, so for the filling runs, you can go a little bit hotter. Back to the 2.4mm wire. Let's get it filled up. During your filling runs, keep your material clamped and you can turn the back purge off. Do not let your test plate overheat, as you could cause problems which may pass x-ray but will fail with more destructive inspections such as hardness checks or bend tests. Going too hot can change the metal's grain structure, causing brittleness and other metallurgy issues, not to mention the constant warping through heat. Okay, filled, ready for cap. I'm going to let it cool down a little bit. For capping, I'm going to go back to 1.6 wire. Once again, the 1.6mm wire, it just melts a bit smoother into the weld pool. The filling run you can go a bit heavier with because you want to get the metal in there. As long as you've got your fusion, you catch your edges in the bevel, you're fine. But for the cap, smaller gauge wire, nice and smooth, melt it in nice and easy, make it look nice. So we'll get it cooled down, get it capped up, and then we can call it done, ready for X-ray. Here she is, all capped, done and sorted. Now to let it cool down, because right now that's too hot to touch. Cut off the runoff plates, give it a final wire brush and tidy up, and see how we are. Here is the finished weld viewed from the root, a cross section and the cap. The root looks good, I'm happy with that. The cap, I'll acknowledge, is not my best. I should have added a little more amps to make it smoother. But I've got full penetration, a nice root, and I'd happily offer this up for an X-ray test and any other inspection test. Whilst that's cooling down, let's have a quick recap on what we've covered. So if you weld to pass X-ray, first and foremost, your preparation has got to be absolutely perfect. That's your bevel, your root edge, your root gap, the TIG wire you use, the purge, how the plates are actually set up in a way where they're not stepped or they don't move, and everything throughout the weld itself. Making sure it all runs smooth, the correct TIG wire, the correct techniques, taking your time, don't rush it, and if something's not right, stop what you were doing, make it right, and then carry on. If you weld past X-ray, you've got to be very disciplined and not take shortcuts. I personally am pretty confident that will pass X-ray, but there is only one way to find out, and that's send it for X-ray. I'm going to do this in the second part of this video, so again, if you want to see that, drop us a subscribe. Any support is welcome and greatly appreciated. Many more videos are coming up, so I'm showing my skills just to help you become a better welder yourself.